Ohai. Oamaru. The largest city in northern Otago on the southern island of New Zealand, the administrative centre of the district of Waitaki. It is located in 80 km to the south from Oamaru and in 120 km to the north from Dunedin, on the Pacific coast. Through the city passes Gosudarsti Highway 1 and the main southern line of the railroad, connecting Oamaru to Oamaru and Dunedin. Due to growth of Queenstown, historically developed status of the second centre of the region of Otago is in the central Otago under the threat. Dunedin remains the main centre of the region. The name Oamaru is derivative of the name in the language of Maori meaning the place Mara. Similar to Oamaru. Concerning the personality, Oamaru disputes are conducted. Near Oamaru several important ancient settlements are located. They are in the mouth of the Waitaki River and in Avamoa's town. Both settlements are dated the Archaic period, an era of Moa hunters. In the culture of Maori, this term is used for designation of tribes of the first settlers on the islands living on the southeast coast approximately in 1125 BB. In the ancient settlement in Utaki's mouth at least 1200 furnaces were revealed. The first archaeological excavations in New Zealand were carried out in Avamoa Walter by Mental in 1847 and 1852. Settlements of the smaller size were found also near the Cape Brown Beach Road in the centre of Oamaru. In Utaki's valley, stone shelters, characteristic of the Archaic period, are located, and researchers don't exclude that some of them were constructed by residents of these settlements. Nearby in Tamakiravu, Tekarachukika, Tipunamara, Papaka and Kakanui, are located the objects of the classical and protohistorical periods dated after 1500 BB. In legends of Maori, it is told about the ancient people of Kakwitipio which constructed a huge canoe of Aritia. On this canoe they swam from the southern New Zealand to the historical homeland of Polynesians, Gavaki. Behind Sweet Potato. On the way back the vessel began to sink near the mouth of the Waitaki River, threw out baskets with products on the Moiraki beach, and finally the vessel sank in Matakea. Shake Point, where over time turned in Dines a Riff. After shipwreck, one of members of the team, Pakibataki, moved off in searches of drinking water, found the Waitaki River, but upon return couldn't reach the place of the crash till the dawn back and turned into the hill in the valley shake. Modern researchers assume that this legend, an allegorical explanation of the fact that sweet potato won't grow to the south from the peninsula banks. On February 20, 1770, James Cook by the Endeavour ship reached the mouth of the Waitaki River and, as it is written in the logbook, stopped approximately in 3 miles from the coast. He wrote that the earth here very low and flat throughout to the hills located in 4 or 5 miles from the coast. All image of the country looks fruitless and we don't see any signs of habitability. Cook remained in this place 4 days. Sidney Parkinson, the artist of an expedition, described the Cape Umbra in Oamaru. On February 20 he wrote, "We were near the earth, pleasant to the eye with the naked eye. Hills were moderate height, is far from them the flat plains adjoining on the perpendicular rocky rock by the sea stretched. Maori already lived here, and in 1814 on the coast seals and seals hunters appeared." In the manuscript found in 2003, it is written, Some natives were absent on the general feast since met the big company from Tamutu, Ikara and Oravenu and came back. Meanwhile the boat came to anchor in Bluff, 8 miles to the north from Moiraki. People went ashore, but went to bed in the boat. At the night of Pukakik, the father Timor went to the boat, found sleeping and returned to the south from Bluff. Then together with 100 natives they killed 5 Europeans and ate them. 2 of 7 used darkness and ran away. They ran 2 days, having appeared in Gudvuda, near Bobashead. The Pukakik company killed and ate them too. Pakik, strangers from Matilda of the Captain Fala, under command of the first assistant Captain Robert Brown with 2 other Europeans and 5 Indian sailors made team numbering 8 people, but not 7, as they say in the manuscript. They moved off in the open boat from the island of Stewart in searches of the runaway Indian sailors. Besides, Brown had also other reasons for their search on the coast of northern Otago. After in 1831 T. Robert plundered the big strengthened settlement of Maori to Kaiapoi near modern Christchurch, refugees came to the south and got permission to locate in Kakonwi and the territory between Pukuri and Nuianakaria, including Oamaru, became their lands. Whalers sometimes visited this part of the New Zealand coast in the 1830th years. For example, the vessel Jason from New London, USA, under control of the Captain Chester. On December 1, 1839 he reported in Otago Bluff, to the south from Kakanui, Nauri of Kakanui, that he collected 2,500 barrels, 400 m. Fat. In 1844 Edward Shortland from Uaika Waitan visited this area. On January 9 he wrote down, we sometimes passed today across the region of the low rock, sometimes along the beach until we approached Oamaru where we curtailed from the coast and crossed low hills from which we looked at extensive plains. To a half of day, we rose by hills Pukuri separating this plain from another, more extensive. The sky was so remarkably clear that from the highest point of a way it was clearly visible to Moiraki. He drew the map and placed on it Oamaru. Shortland was one of the few Europeans who passed on foot in this area of New Zealand in the 1840th years. James Sanders, about 1850, which organized trade between tribes of Maori in the mouth of the Wataki River, became the first European settler in this region. The bigger number of the European settlers lodged in Oamaru in the 1850th years. E. Robinson built the hut of the turf at a stream of Oamaru in 1853 when he based the sheep breeding farm here. J.T. Thompson pulled Oamaru the city in 1859, and authorities of the province of Otago registered hundreds of inhabitants here on November 30, 1860. The city developed as the center of the agricultural region between mountains Kakanui and the Wataki River. In 1871 began construction of a breakwater, and Oamaru quickly here became the main seaport. Many years the city harbor at the Cape Umbrai served as a haven for merchant and fishery vessels in the Gulf-friendly bay. With development of pastoralism and the related industry of fresh frozen meat originating in New Zealand to the south from Oamaru in the town of Totara, Oamaru blossomed. appeared at NUM, High School of Wataki for boys and High School of Wataki for girls and rich deposits of local limestone. A stone of Oamaru, which is giving into a carving, were used by designers and local masters such as J.M. Forrester, 1865-1965. At the time of a long depression in the 1880th years of Oamaru became the best of constructed and the most put city in Australasia. Development slowed down, but the population continued to grow till 1970th years. With closing of port and decline of economy of New Zealand of Oamaru strongly I suffered. However, the city authorities tried to reopen anew the city, and Oamaru became one of the first cities in New Zealand which turned the architectural heritage into assets. In 1983, in the neoclassical building Ajar of New South Wales of the architect Robert Lawson was opened public art gallery, Forrester. English de Forrester. Other buildings are restored. A fund is formed and work on restoration of historical constructions near port began, perhaps, one of the most atmospheric urban areas in New Zealand. By the beginning of the 21st century, heritage became the noticeable industry. Famous people. Many of early works of Janet Frame, who grew up in the city, reflect conditions of Oamaru and its inhabitants. Oamaru also meets in Owen Marshall's creativity, Greg McGahey and Fiona Farrell. In Oamaru were born and studied A. Wilson, the founder of charitable shelters for homeless shelter. Australian Prime Minister Chris Watson. New Zealand politicians Arnold Nordmeyer and William Stewart. Cardinal Thomas Stafford Williams. Malcolm Grant, President and Vice-Rector of University College London. Captain of the national team of New Zealand on rugby Richie McCaw. Fred Allen, the Duke of the national team on rugby in the 1940th years, which led team to 14 victories in 14 games in the 1960th, was born in Oamaru, but didn't study here. For the first time the world learned about the death of Robert Scott and dates of his team upon return from the ill-fated expedition to the South Pole from the telegram sent from Oamaru on February 10, 1913. In 1920, the 1940th Frank Milner. 1875-1944. Turned High School of Wataki for boys into one of the most reputable schools by means of the old-fashioned values, an inspiring management and broad outlook. Famous graduates of this school: Charles Bresch, 1909-1973. Poet and patron of artists. Douglas Lil Byron, 1915-2001. Composer, senior statesman of the New Zealand music. James Bertram, 1910-1993. Writer and academician. Dennis Blundell, Governor General of New Zealand. January Milner, 1911-1991. Director's son, the Czech and English scientist in a false manner accused of espionage in favor of communism. His father, famous as person, suddenly died on December 2, 1944, speaking at opening of Stone Gate in the Park Milner, Oamaru. E.A. Gifford, 1819-1894. the artist and the member of the Royal Academy of Arts, lived in Oamaru from 1877 to 1885 and since 1892 until the end of life. He gained recognition for the works in portrait and landscape genres. His Auckland from Pier of 1887 is probably the most known picture representing Auckland of the 19th century. Emily Gillis, the artist of the 19th century from Oamaru, was a niece of Edward Lear, 1812–1888, the famous English aquarellist and the writer. His sister Lyra practically grew up him. When he died childless, she inherited the collection of his works having the international value. Then these works got to Northern Otago where remained up to the beginning of the 1970th years. The artist Colin McEachin lived in Oamaru in 1930–1931, attending high school. This place and landscapes of Northern Otago impressed him. Being an adult, he came back here several times during the travel. The animator John Kent, the author of the comic book Varunshka for the British newspaper The Guardian, was born in Oamaru. There is a big community of artists, and many galleries are placed in rooms near historical places. One of the main city artists, Dawn Dementi, makes portraits and masks. At least partly thanks to her work, in Oamaru in July there takes place the annual Festival of Masks, Winter Masquerade. One more annual holiday devoted to the Victorian heritage is carried out in November. Besides, the former residents of Oamaru are the radio host Jim Mora and the hockey player Scott Anderson. Sites. Many public buildings are built of the local limestone extracted near Weston. This limestone is called also a stone of Oamaru. The southern part of the Oamaru Business Center is considered one of the most impressive city landscapes because of many outstanding buildings built of this material. This part of the city and a part of the city near the harbor remain as historical territories. Many of streets of Oamaru received the names of the rivers in England, in particular proceeding in the northwest and the southeast of the country. Thames Street, the main street with a set of shops and commercial points. Severn Street, on which passes Gosadarsti and Highway 1. Kane Street, on which there are historical commercial buildings and art gallery the Libratory. In a coastal part of the city where houses were located before, but today showrooms, the museums, shops open here and attract with the ancient Victorian buildings. Here are presented a huge statue swing in the penny farthing bicycle form, and several squares are executed in style. In August 2016, Oamaru was included in the Guinness Book of Records on the greatest meeting of objects a stimpanka in the world. Every Sunday the engine plies between the small railway station and colony of blue penguins. In the city harbour it is possible to see colony of small blue penguins, and to the south from the city there lives the colony of magnificent yellow-eyed penguins. Both colonies attract ecoturists. Sometimes penguins live under the buildings located near the coast, including Undercity Musical Club, Penguin. Through Oamaru it is possible to get to a river basin of Mackenzie to the west from the city, through Uitaki's Valley. Shibboleth. In southern Kaitahaen. A dialect of language of Maori the first is ignored and in the name of the city. Lobster. Northern Maori prefer to do an accent on the first and. About and Maru. It allows to judge origin of speaking from Otago, as in audio here, or from the territories located to the north. Massachusetts media. In Oamaru the headquarters of periodicals is located. The Oamaru Mail newspapers, leaving on weekdays. The Oamaru Telegram, appearing every Tuesday. Waitaki Herald, appearing every Wednesday and Fridays. The city is an e-cover zone of Radio Dunedin and zones of distribution of the Otago Daily Times newspaper, which edition is located in Dunedin. In Oamaru there is own television station, 45 South Television, broadcasting from the Cape Umbra on the 41st channel. Cycle tourism. Oamaru will be a final point of the cycle route, from the Alps to the ocean, beginning on Mount Cook. This route is to be built within the project of construction of network of cycle routes of New Zealand. Education. High School of Waitaki for boys, the average boarding school for boys located in a northern part of Oamaru, day form of education, founded in 1883. As of 2012 in her slightly less than 500 people studied. High School of Waitaki for girls, the state average boarding school for girls founded in 1887. As of 2012 in her about 400 girls aged from 13 up to 18 years studied. About 50 girls, the international students and teachers live in the school hostel boarding school. St. Iosif School was founded by Dominican sisters and Christian brothers. It is the only Catholic elementary school in northern Otago. Training is conducted with 1 to 8 classes here. As of 2012 a little more than 200 people studied here. In personnel of school monks aren't registered now. In culture, by Janet Frame of a Bellatrixerval of Oamaru of her childhood in novels, having called his Waimara. In the short story by Peter Hamilton, The Sleeping Beauty Emptiness. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.